welcome to the virtual edition of our year-round member screening series, Film Independent Presents. My name's Jen Wilson, and I'm a senior programmer here at Film Independent. Today we have a Q&A with Neil deGrasse Tyson for the show Cosmos, Possible Worlds. I want to say thank you to Film Independent Presents lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. The HFPA has been an ardent supporter of this program for many years, and we're so thankful for their support. Thank you to our new virtual screenings partner, Vision Media. Make sure to check out filmindependent.org calendar to see what screenings we have coming up. Just a note to anybody watching today, there is a button at the bottom of the screen for questions if you'd like to submit a question for our moderator to ask our guest towards the end of the Q&A. And now please welcome today's moderator. He's Scott Mantz, a film critic, a host, a Q&A moderator, an Emmy-nominated producer, a Beatlemaniac, a Trekker, and a La La Lander for life. Welcome, Scott Mantz.
Oh, Jen, thank you so much. Somebody's been reading my Twitter bio.
Yes, I did.
And thank you to Film Independent for having me moderate today. A few more words about our guest of honor. He is a six-time Emmy Award nominee. In addition to hosting Cosmos Possible Worlds, he is also the host of his own show, Star Talk, and he is the recipient of the Distinguished Public Service Medal from NASA back in 2004, and he is the director of the Hayden Planetarium at the Museum of Natural History in New York. Neil deGrasse Tyson, astrophysicist, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. And I hope you like what I've done with the place.
I love it, and I got to say, nowhere better does Van Gogh's Star Unite come in more handy than to talk about Cosmos, Possible Worlds.
And just a quick historical note. This scene was an actual, real time of the night that was drawn for that material. So if you go back to 1889 when it was painted, this would have been at about 4:30 in the morning on June 21st, and the brighter object there is Venus, and that's the crescent moon. It looks a little bit like an eclipsed sun, but it's the crescent moon. And the moon and Venus was at that angle at that time of day, just in the pre-dawn hours, and that's the image that is captured here. So,
that is why that image is perfect for today's conversation. And Neil, watching the original Cosmos when I was 11 years old back in 1980, and watching season 2 and now season 3, I gotta say, Neil, that watching season 3 now, it has taken on a whole new meaning. So I just want to start off by asking, Neil, what makes Cosmos Possible Worlds the show that we need right now?
Yeah, so let me take a step back just for a moment and say Cosmos in all three renditions was a show the world needed at the time it came out, and this one especially so. Mm-hmm. I just want to remind people that the original Cosmos, hosted by Carl Sagan in 1980, that we were still under the specter of the Cold War. And the threat that we would all be annihilated. It would still be another 10 years before, the wall would come down in Europe. And so there's certain themes and elements and calls for responsibility to become better shepherds of our own fate in civilization that began right in the first episode of that first show. So part of the DNA of Cosmos is it's not just science, because you can watch any science documentary. There's no shortage of those. You can open up a textbook, read a wiki page, but it's how science empowers us to have control and understanding of who and what we are in our environment, on this earth, in this universe. And in Cosmos Possible Worlds, that's a title that Anne Druyan came up, because she's like the keeper of the soul of Cosmos. She's the secret sauce in all three Cosmoses. She's Carl Sagan's widow, collaborated in all three, and is the principal writer. There are a few other writers, but she's the main sort of idea engine for this program. She came up with that title, and when she first told it to me, I even teared up a little. It was like, possible world. There's so much contained in just that phrase. Mm-hmm. It's like, whatever world we're in, that's not the world we want. Can you share with us what is possible? And it's not the idle possible. Let's wait around and see what shows up. It's, you are a participant in making something happen that is possible. And now we're in COVID lockdown. We're it's the day the earth stood still, right? As has been said, right? We stopped. We're all at home now. Okay. That's a different world. And the same messaging, where we need to become better. We need to understand what role science and technology and engineering have played in our lives and what role it can play in the future. If it's not evident to you now, it'll never be evident. And I have no hope for civilization.
Well, I got to say, first of all, when you were talking to Anne and you said that you got a little emotional when she was talking to you about possible worlds. And when I first saw the title Possible Worlds, I started thinking about other worlds, like when the episode that covers the Cassini spacecraft around Saturn. But it's our possible world. And the show is so aspirational, and it's so full of hope that I got very emotional watching, especially this episode episode 13, the last episode of the season. And I want to talk about the aspirational, inspiring message that Cosmos Possible Worlds has. And also, very, very important, how people should take science to heart, especially these days.
Yeah, and again, that's the secret sauce of Cosmos. It's why Cosmos, you can't watch it without feeling compelled to learn something extra, to use what you've learned to try to make a better world. And yes, it's by the way, it's all too easy to make a show that's saying, we're all going to die. That's the end of the world. That's all too easy to do. And we have plenty of that. And I tweeted recently that every disaster film begins with some important people ignoring scientists. Politicians, people in control, people with power, people with money. And the scientists say, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's not a good idea. And they do it anyway, and then disaster unfolds. Mm-hmm. You'd think we've learned, after all of Hollywood disaster movies, that we've been fed decade by decade. So what Cosmos does that's different, I'm just echoing what you said succinctly, is, I'm just using more words to say it, that it's at every turn of idea, of concept, it comes with it threads of hope that and by the 13th episode, you have woven a tapestry of hope from these threads that flowed through each one of those episodes. Mm-hmm. And that's important, because otherwise it's just an informational series and you're done and you go on to, well, what's next? What else can I binge? Otherwise it wouldn't sit with you in the way it needs to in order to have that effect. And Possible Worlds, as you noted, your first thought is maybe, exoplanets, and we're discovering, sure, that's in there. But a world is more than that, okay? A world is, you can think of it in a more abstract way. What is the world that ants live in? That's a world. They all know what they're doing, and or bees. There's a world, you say, oh, they're just flying around and pollinating flowers and that. Okay, but there's a world. They get back to the nest and they communicate with each other where the next location is. And we think they're just doing nothing, just getting in each other's way. No, there's real communication going on there. And have we gotten into what it is they're saying? No. Yet it's in a sense, it's an alien language on our own planet, a world within a world. And so here we are saying, let's go find aliens and have a conversation with them, when where's the effort to have the conversation with nature before we engage in such an act? Because it is nature, we and nature are co-dependent on an ecosystem that people either take for granted or don't know, or they do know but have disregard for it. that's the worst, right? So how do you bring someone who's standing over here to stand over here, to look around and say, I see the world differently now because of this messaging that I experienced for having watched Cosmos?
And the other takeaway, among many, Neil, I mean, so many takeaways from watching this season, is how science is all one story. It's all so connected. And again, because of our current predicament, it just, you're watching, you go, like, it really blew my mind.
Yeah, and in fact, that may be, there's several pillars on which Cosmos stands. I think one of them, which you don't even notice unless someone points it out to you, because it's done so seamlessly in the writing and in the set design and in the visual effects, is there is no one branch of science. It's all science. Yeah, we've split up chemistry. Oh, here's your chemistry book and take chemistry class, and then you learn the periodic table. Now, here's biology class, and you learn evolution. And here's the, we split that up. The universe is not saying, let's have separate books on these different branches of science. This is not what the universe is saying. If you want to totally understand what's going on out there, you need a seamless journey among all the sciences, the geology, the astrophysics, the physics, the engineering, because it all comes together. And it's what is your fluency in it all? Because the solution to our problems most definitely requires cross-disciplinary fluency to solve. And so, yeah, it's one seamless blend of all the sciences you thought were separate.
The other takeaway for me, Neil, is, so a couple months ago, I'm one of your 14 million followers on Twitter. Okay.
But you're my favorite follower.
So a couple months ago, I think maybe it was even in March or April, you posted a picture taken by astronaut Ed Mitchell from Apollo 14 of the Earthrise above the moon. And you referenced the overview effect. And that overview effect is what I experienced watching Cosmos Possible Worlds. So talk about that overview effect in relation to Cosmos.
Yeah, sure. So for those unfamiliar with the term, the overview effect has been invoked maybe by psychologists first, but it's an account of how you are changed by having gone into Earth orbit or gone into space at some distance from Earth and looking back to Earth. It's an overview. And that overview changes you. And it changes you, as it did Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut, in ways that might otherwise be hard to imagine if you've never had that view. Mm-hmm. So there you are. Even maybe a picture helps a little, but if you're there in body and soul and you're looking down, and it's, oh my gosh, here is Earth that I was trained to think of as in a schoolroom globe with color-coded countries, sharply delineated on the land masses. And here you are looking at Earth the way nature had intended, with oceans and land and clouds. And you say to yourself, my gosh, my species down there drew lines to separate each other, to tribalize our species by anything that you can come up with, by your skin color, by who you worship, by what foods you eat, by what geographic by what language you speak. And you say, oh my gosh, what's wrong with us? And so you come back and you watch the geopolitics unfold, and you say to yourself, maybe we sent the wrong people into space. We need to send the politicians into space, okay? And maybe leave some of them there. I don't know. We could probably leave some of them there for sure. What Cosmos attempts to do at every turn is change your perspective. So I want to go one up on top of the overview effect and say what's above even that is a cosmic perspective. The cosmic perspective sees Earth not as some special place in the universe. Yes, it's special because it's precious to us. But if you think it's special in the universe, you're just wrong. And if by thinking it's special, you want to now put yourself above others or above other planets or above other life, no, that's an inaccurate understanding of the layout of this universe. And so what Cosmos does, it at every turn, it just gets you thinking differently about what you were taking for granted, about your role and your place in this world. So that's all throughout all three cosmoses, and especially in this one, where with the COVID crisis, I tweeted, I don't know if you remember, maybe one of my followers, I don't know if you read everything I post, but at one point, I'll test you. No, at one point I just noted that this early, like second week of March or something, early in the COVID rise,
yep,
it was like, wait a minute, here's a virus nobody expected. And it infects you no matter where you live. Again, no matter what country you're from, no matter what language you speak, it is an enemy to our species. This is a Hollywood story. An alien comes in and wants to kill us all. Are we all going to get together about, here we are fighting each other. Now something out there wants to kill us both. What are you going to do? Well, we're both human and they're not. So let's turn our weaponry that way. Are we organized enough to coordinate world resources to fight a common enemy? That was the big test. That's the shot across our bow. And I don't think, some places did better than others, but here in the United States, I'm here in New York right now. I guess you're in Los Angeles. Here in the United States, we have some countries, we want to open our borders. We can't make me do this. And other countries not opening their borders. Do you realize if some country, when I say opening the borders, opening up the marketplace for people to re-exchange the virus, if you do this and you're neighboring a state that's not, the analogy is it's like having a peeing section of the swimming pool. You want to just pee over there in the same swimming pool that we're all in. Right? That's what that is. That's what you're doing there. It has to be coordinated. And if it's not, it will win and not us. So the call to arms, if it will, I hate military analogies, but the call to defense against something that's trying to attack us all, and people are not listening to medical experts. And plus, I'm sorry, I'm doing all the talking here. I want to hear more about what your questions are. Here's an important fact. When the virus was new, we're still figuring it out. So you get the latest best that you can at any given moment, but you recognize that can change. That evolves as more data come in. Don't just say, you told me something different this week and from last week, therefore I'm not going to believe anything you tell me. You don't understand what science is and how and why it works. It is the accumulation of data that then informs conclusions. And when those conclusions affect policy and politics, oh my gosh, if you're just going to reject it just because you want something to be true, that is the surest way to unravel the civilization that has been so long hard fought to build.
That is absolutely well said. And I could comment on that, but I want to ask you a question that I thought about watching Cosmos Possible Worlds, is that in terms of this shot across the bow, in terms of, you brought up something really, really interesting I never thought about before, that we're only thinking ahead the next few years, like to the next election or something like that. We don't think far enough ahead. So how far ahead should we really think as a species?
Yeah, let me give a very small analogy to this. I'm a lifetime resident of New York City. I went away to college, but I came back and I'm living there now. And New York City, believe it or not, has some of the purest, cleanest drinking water of any city in the world. Okay? I know people don't want to believe that, but it's really true. And I didn't notice this. To me, it's just what water tastes like. Until I started visiting other cities, like, ew, what is it? And I go to some cities, they put lemon in the water. Why are you putting lemon in the water? Oh, that's why you're putting lemon in the water. And then I see the rise of commercially available water. And that could not have been invented by New Yorkers, because we were perfectly happy with the water that comes out of our faucet. And then I say, well, where did this water come from? Well, it comes from mountains in upstate New York, in a aqueduct, gravity-driven aqueduct, like they did in ancient Rome, because the mountains are higher than New York City. So they built pipes, and they built the pipes to last 100 years. Okay, not just in the election cycle or for the mayor or for the president at the time, for 100 years. Do you know what, in the turn of the century, to build something that lasts 100 years, you know what kind of engineering foresight that required? Oh my gosh. And so I think about that and I say, wow, are we doing anything today that can be enjoyed 100 years from now? Nobody's thinking on those terms. They're thinking in the quarterly report, the annual report, the 2-year or the 4-year election cycle. And that's a problem, because then you're stuck confronting challenges where there's no foundation for you to even begin to address it efficiently or perhaps at all. And that could simply be the end of our civilization. The best example of that is an asteroid strike. You know that if the dinosaurs had a space program, they'd still be around today, because they would have knocked out that asteroid that took them out 65 million years ago. But no, they didn't have opposable thumbs, and they had the walnut-sized brain and all the other stuff that would interfere with this. What kind of foresight does that take? You get a catalog of asteroids. One could hit us in 500 years. What are you going to do about that? No, let someone else worry about it. Invest a little bit of what we are to protect that, to protect civilization, to guard against extinction.
Climate change.
Climate change will not render us extinct, okay? But it will completely redraw the maps of the world. This is something about climate change. People say, oh, it'll change the weather and that's not good. Here, let me quantify this. You ready? Okay? There's land ice on Antarctica, and most of the land ice in the world is in Antarctica and Greenland. Okay? If you warm the Earth through certain critical levels, several degrees Celsius, okay? Those begin to melt. They're already melting. If you melt that water into the ocean levels rise. You know how high it will rise? To the level of the Statue of Liberty's left elbow.
Oh.
That's the arm that's holding the document that has July 4th, 1776. That's how high the oceans will be. And you know how the world will be different? Most of the most important cities in the world for commerce, for transportation, for politics, are on the water's edge for those very reasons. It's what enabled transportation and commerce and the like. So if your greatest cities of the world that took centuries to build are on the water's edge, climate change will bury them. So no, we're not going to end up extinct. But you know who is caring about climate change? The military is caring about it, because it destabilizes the whole nations where the average elevation is just a few feet above sea level. Gone. You will have climate change refugees destabilizing the world, because the rest of us are not giving a rat's ass about what the long-term consequences are of our current behavior. And what Cosmos tries to do is bring upon us all a sense of accountability and responsibility. But knowing that not everyone knows what to do, but Cosmos gives you ways to think about this, the ways that the power of the methods and tools of science gives us, grants us. Oh, how responsible we need to be with those powers, because they can destroy as well as save. But so you need wisdom as well as the knowledge to ensure that our species can live in harmony with this earth forever. And not have some extinction episode in 100 years where the rats rise up 500 years from 50,000 years from now, and they have a museum of humans. Oh, these creatures used to walk around the earth. skeletons of humans the way we look at skeletons of dinosaurs. So,
well, I want to turn it over to people watching who have submitted questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my answers are so long. I can tighten them up just so we can get more in there.
I want you to keep talking because I'm hanging on your every word. This is exactly what a conversation should be.
No, it's not. I'm doing all the talking. It's not a conversation. But I'll shut up and listen to more of what the questions are. Good.
Okay, so this one is from Travis Clark. Question is, if you could snap your fingers and one mystery of the universe would be revealed, what mystery would you choose?
That's a great question. And so I let me give a weird cop-outy answer to that. I don't think about the unknowns of the universe as the one thing that'll then make me sleep well at night, because I think about once we get that answer, you're now standing in a new place, a new vista. And now you will see other questions that you don't see today. So the question I want to snap my finger and have answered is the question I have yet to come up with, because the questions I now want to answer will take me to a new place to see those yet to be dreamt of questions. So that's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but that's how I actually think about it. Now, if I would try to be more practical, I would say, I want to understand and solve the problem of why it is that humans are so resistant to planning for a long-term future. Because if we can learn that psychologically and perhaps correct for that, then problems that are in the future are not so scary because we'll all be planning for them. And you don't get the selfishness of, I only care about me in this moment rather than you in tomorrow's moment. So there's certain things you can plant the seeds of today that would then generously pay dividends going into the future. So when I think about those one questions with one answers, I think about the frailties of our species and how we can overcome them in spite of ourselves.
Wow. Next question comes from Charlie. And actually, this is a great question because I'm a big sci-fi guy. So his question is, what is your biggest pet peeve about how sci-fi depicts the future?
So I don't claim special knowledge of the future. And I've said this before, too. Don't look to me like I'm the guy who knows the future. And I have excellent evidence of how bad I am at that. And it has to do with, I'm old enough, I'm older than you. I remember the original Star Trek series. Yes. And in that, there's a lot of future things. They had food that just came out hot from the wall in a matter of seconds. And obviously, this is before microwave ovens were a commodity, a commercial entity. So I said, I can imagine that in the future. And warp drive, I can imagine that. And photon torpedoes and transporters, sure. What I could not accept was how it was they could just walk up to doors and the doors would know they were there and open for them. I said, no. So I was accepting everything else in that 3 millennium future and not auto opening doors. To show how old I am, I grew up in a time where you had to actually physically open every door you confronted. My point is, I'm not going to judge the creativity of Hollywood for imagining a future. I'm just not. Because I don't know what the future will be. What I will say is, in your imagined future, if you violate known laws of physics, I'm going to come after you. I'm going to talk about you. I'm going to be all up in your situation saying, you did not solve this in a clever way. You just abandoned what we know to be true about the universe. And I don't think that's being creative. Being creative is working within, quote, the constraints of what is, and take your imagination to a next step. And you know something? Half the time, what you think is a constraint is not. Okay? Don't get me started. You got me on this roll here. The original, was it 1980, 79 movie, The Black Hole?
Oh, okay? Yes, 79.
I was completely black hole fluent by the time that movie came out. And their depiction of a black hole is like, no, I'm just like, no. They left so much on the table. I don't think it was ever there on the table. They could have spaghettified people as they fell in, distorted the space-time continuum. It would have been way more interesting than they showed it. What they had there looked like some scene from the Southwest United States, but with darkened red light with flames coming out like it was some version of Dante's Hell. I'm thinking, no, you by avoiding the truth, you told a less interesting and a less compelling story. So I'm going to quote Mark Twain here. It's to all you all out there, because I know you're out there. I feel you out there. It's first get your facts straight, then distort them at your leisure. Mark Twain.
Well, one thing about that movie, The Black Hole, that does have going for it is the score by John Barry is magnificent.
I got to go back. I was too distracted to hear the score. my blood was coming out of my eyes. I'll go back.
Yeah.
I'll find it, and I'll get a second look at the score. Yeah.
Melanie Cohen has a great question. And Neil, her question is, how can we in our everyday lives spread this message of positivity to those who may not be exposed to this wonderful series?
Yeah. So in my later years, in my older age, I try to find solutions that are different from the obvious. Okay. So you're saying, how do you spread the same message that's in Cosmos to those who won't see Cosmos? The same positive messaging. Mm-hmm. And my answer is, just make sure everyone sees Cosmos. that you don't have to do that, okay? No, there are many solutions that have arisen in that way. For example, do you know about the manure apocalypse? Did you know about the manure catastrophe? Do you know about this? Okay, so back 120 years ago in New York City, millions of people live in this city, and they're horse-drawn carriages and horse cabs, and everybody's getting around in horses, and there's horse poop and manure everywhere, and there are people whose job it was to clean it up. What do you do with it? Well, you bring it to some other place, and then you gather it, you put it in carts, and then it gets carted out of Manhattan. Okay? Well, what's pulling the cart? Other horses. So the thing that's getting rid of the manure is still putting manure in the street. And someone calculated there's some threshold where the city would just be buried in manure. So people thought maybe there's some special feed we can give the horses so that they don't poop so much. Or plus it was a fly problem, okay? The sanitation related to flies that are reproducing in horse poop. So everyone is thinking, is there something we can feed them that won't feed the flies? Is there some? Everyone is trying to come up with solutions, and the solution was the car. The car got rid of the manure. Of course, the car brought other problems, but at the time, the solution was the car. So just because you have a problem doesn't mean the solution will come about by analyzing that problem, okay? So you come to me and say, how do we get people to know the Cosmos message who don't see Cosmos? Find a way to get everyone to see Cosmos.
That's the best answer. Absolutely. It is a must-see in every sense of the word. And
I don't like telling people what to do, and I never do. I want to help people think about making their own decisions. But I have to say, especially this third season, 2020, it's got some of the most moving content I've ever seen in a science documentary. In fact, if everyone who's seeing this has seen that 13 episode, there's a final recitation that I give that I teared up in the. It's a narrative part. I teared up just in the sound studio delivering that, and this is a script I had seen and I'd been part of, and it's because I'm emotional. It's not obvious, maybe, but I'll tear up in movies when you're not looking. Even stupid movies.
Like The Black Hole.
That's for different. That was blood. That wasn't tears. So I think when you combine message with emotion. I think that in a formula, message plus emotion equals action. and not everyone has this equal capacity to act for action. You can do it on a small way or a larger way, but every little bit will help until the point where it's a movement. Okay, it's a movement. Oh, one other quick thing. I want to make sure we still have more questions. I've learned that you can't really change the behavior of 1 billion people, not quickly or overnight, the way a movement might want it to happen. So a way you can do it is, again, you find a solution in another way. As you surely know, the agriculture takes a huge toll on the ecosystem, not only from methane, from farm animals and monocrops and all of this. And you have all these meat eaters who just still want to eat meat. Okay, I'm a meat eater. I'm an omnivore. I try to spend 5 days a week not eating meat. That's my little bit. Of course, I could go all the way, but I'm not ready for that yet. It's a very individual thing, I think. But the solution might one day be, not that meat eaters stop making meat, but that we figure out how to grow meat proteins in the lab. And then we have meat growing protein factories, and then you don't have to kill any animals at all. And in fact, here's a future. You ready? Someone make this movie, because whoever's watching this, some of you all make movies, right? So here's a movie. In the future, all meat is grown protein strands in a laboratory. So meat eaters become the only people who do not kill other living things to survive. Because vegetarians are slaughtering plants for their survival, and it's part of the life of the ecosystem. So you'd have an inversion of who's blaming who for who's killing things. And we might learn one day that trees or plant life has some spiritual significance, but you've been eating it for all this time. So there was a story called, I think They're Made of Meat, which was aliens who came to Earth and found out that humans have to kill other living things in order to eat, and how barbaric that was. There's only 2 things you don't kill to eat, and that's milk and honey. Everything else was once a living thing, no matter what your diet is. So it's an interesting thing to think about if you really care about life.
Oh, yes, absolutely. You always care about life. When I was watching, especially the last episode, and also the episode with the Cassini scientists watching their baby die in Saturn, I did get very emotional this season. And I thought it was just me, but I'm glad to hear that you two got emotional just by working on it.
Yeah, I got emotional even knowing the content in advance and doing it on set and the green screens and in studio. So that told me that it was particularly potent. I mean, it's Anne at her best. She brings the humanity, not herself a scientist, but someone who feels science. She doesn't just know the science she knows, she feels it and connects it to your soul of curiosity and more importantly, your soul of concern. And it was her idea to put in the World's Fair motif. Okay, mm-hmm. I said I was older than you. I attended the 1964 New York World's Fair. Did it in early 1965, or summer 1965, and Carl Sagan attended the New York World's Fair in 1939 on the same fairgrounds, Flushing Meadows, Queens. And I was forever influenced by my experience there. It was a vision of the future. We were going into space. My sense of what the future should be was etched in me in ways that remain to this day. Such was also the case with Carl Sagan in the 1939 World's Fair. If you're unfamiliar with that World's Fair, just Google it. Just look at the modernity of what was represented at that time. And right on the dawn of the Second World War, so people were not really paying attention at the time, but still, they were glimmers of hope. And so what we did in episode 13 was imagine a World's Fair in 2039. Mm-hmm. Now, since a World's Fair imagines the future, there's a double future imagining there. There's what will life be like in 2039, and what will people in 2039 imagine their future to be? And in that future, they have solved all of our current problems that we face. And we give suggestions of how that might be, but they're just suggestions. It's the idea that we have the power of mind and the wisdom of mind to solve such problems. And once you have that confidence, gosh, I'd like to be a million-year species.
Well, that leads us to our last question before we wrap things up, Neil.
Let's do 2 questions, and I'll answer each in half the time. Go.
Okay. So one question comes from...
I did the math on that. It works out.
Yeah, okay. So Luis Garcia asks, how do you engage non-science people and get them to listen and be excited about science?
That's hard. It's not as hard as getting people who reject science actively to get them to be interested in science. That's the hardest. So let me just describe the hardest case. In that hardest case, what I have found, especially through my Star Talk programming, is first you get people to smile and laugh. You have fun with information. Then you talk about the science that's in their life that they're taking for granted. And you know there's science in their life. They'll say, oh, I hate you scientists. Oh, wait a minute. I got a phone call on my cell phone. Okay. Well, you know how much science is in this thing? For me, this is the greatest thing since the printing press. Okay. In terms of how much science is folded into and wrapped up in that one device. So you can't just beat them on the head. That doesn't work. You can't just say, you idiot, you're wrong. That doesn't work. You got to sort of walk with them instead of ahead of them. And I have found that increases the likelihood that someone will come to appreciate and embrace the role that science can and needs to play in our civilization. Okay, one more. Can you flip in one more?
One more. This last question comes from me. And this question is just to wrap up all 3 seasons of Cosmos, especially during this time. How can we all take a cosmic view of the human potential?
Okay, I can only tell you what I've done.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I don't even know if this will work for other people or whether people would want to do it. There's all the rage lately about people, finding their genetic roots. Oh, here's my ancestor, and here's my this, or I'm from this country, and my great parent was an engineer or an artist. Maybe that's why I'm an artist. Or when you do this, you're being very tribal. What you're saying is, I am who I am because someone 300 years ago was who they were. Well, really? We're living we go into space today. Okay. Are you really constraining who you can become based on the ambitions of people in your family lineage that came before you? Why not open it to greater opportunity than anything that happened before? So for me, I have an active disinterest in my genetic roots because if you do the math, any 2 people in this world, if you go far enough back, have a common ancestor, a common grandparent, a great-great-great-great-grandparent. And how you know that's true? We have 7 billion people in the world. Everyone has 2 parents, okay? Each one of them has 2 parents. Each one of them has 2 parents. And as you go back in time, you get trillions of people if all parents were unique, okay? But as you go back in time, the population is less than it is today. So how can you go from trillions to something that's less? It's because there's a lot of overlap in who's the parent of whom. And so when I think about the world that way, I say to myself, what can I be in life? I look to the entire human species. I look at the brilliance of Isaac Newton. I look at the commitment of Olympic athletes. I look at the compassion of people who devoted their lives to helping others. I look at all these people and I say, part of them is in part of me because we're all human. And it's they who I reference when I want to achieve or accomplish something in my life. So to try to make a difference, look to other people who have made a difference and say to yourself, I am human just the way they are. and that genetic pool that makes humanity, which is some of the worst behavior and some of the greatest of behaviors that has ever been exhibited, is in our genome. So do some editing there and find the good stuff that serves humanity in ways that can assure, as a minimum, that we don't go extinct. But I want to do better than that. I want us to thrive in the future. I want our descendants to be proud of who we were rather than embarrassed by what it is we bequeath them.
And there you go. Wow. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Once again, the show is Cosmos Possible Worlds. Please check out the entire season, and please check out all 3 seasons. They are absolutely a must-see and absolutely emotional and fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Film Independent conversation with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Everybody, be well and be safe. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.